Hi everyone, good evening. If you look at this picture very well, this picture I'm showing you here, you will see the picture of a man, and right in front of him, you'll see the picture of a human skull. By the right side, you will see another picture of a human body. Let me show it very well. You can see these two mummified bodies standing. This is in Egypt in the 19th century. Street vendors selling mummified mummies in Egypt in 1865. So what happened here was that after the French conquered Egypt, they started selling mummies in Egypt, exporting these mummies in Egypt, started using the mummies to do parties, grinding them to powders and drinking them for medicinal purposes according to them, started exporting these bodies to Egypt. In fact, these accounts have it that they were, because of the high demand for mummies in Egypt, in Europe, being exported to Europe, they started counterfeiting the bodies of beggars in the streets to mummies, and started exporting these mummified bodies to different parts of Europe. Can you imagine the kind of barbaricness that the Europeans exerted on Africans? I know it's not the current Europeans that did that, even though in many ways they are still taking the footsteps of their ancestors. But the annoying part of this whole thing is that Africans haven't suffered this horrifying event in the hands of the white men, in the hands of Europeans, have still willingly submitted themselves as slaves today. Africans have refused to develop themselves. Africans are still begging IMF, IBBRD, WHO, UNESCO, UNICEF for stipends. A lot of what is being used to develop Europe today is still gotten from Africa. Despite these horrifying events, Africans are still modeling their identity around the identities of these same people that have oppressed them for hundreds of years. Now read along with me, so it won't be as if I make this up. During the Victorian era of 1800s, Napoleon's conquest of Egypt threw open the gates of Egypt's history for Europeans. At that time, mummies were not accorded the respect that they deserved from European elites. And in fact, mummies could be purchased from street vendors, just as you can see here, as shown in the picture, to be used as main event for parties and social gatherings that took place in the 18th century. You can imagine. Now let's read on. The elites of that era. Let me just continue. The elites of that era would often hold mummy unwrapping parties. Imagine, which, as the name suggests, had the main theme in which a mummy would be unwrapped in front of a boisterous audience, cheering and applauding at the same time. During that period of time, the well-preserved remains of ancient Egyptians were routinely ground into powder and consumed as a medicinal remedy. Indeed, so popular was pulverized mummy that it even instigated a counterfeit trade to meet demand, in which the flesh of beggars was passed off as that of ancient mummified Egyptians. Imagine the horror. So Egyptians of that time who came out to beg because they don't have means of livelihood, were killed and turned into mummies and exported. So let's continue. As the Industrial Revolution progressed, so Egyptian mummies were exploited for more utilitarian purposes. Huge numbers of human and animal mummies were ground up and shipped to Britain and Germany for use as fertilizer. Can you see it? The Britain now that Africans see they cannot do without. We are trading the bodies, the mummified bodies of dead Africans, when they know that these are their fellow human beings. This was in 1800s. You can see These people that you are seeing as role models, they were horrific people. It is high time Africans started doing away with the French, with the British. The French and the British are not our friends. They are our enemies. They have done so much evil to Africans. It is high time Africans started looking for ways to erase these people completely from Africa, because the British and the French are one of the worst things that have ever happened to the African history. For how long will my people continue to remain slaves to the British? For how long will you remain slaves to the French? For how long? Now, let's just continue this. As the Industrial Revolution progressed, so Egyptian mummies were used for utilitarian purposes. Now, see. Others were used to create mummy brown pigments, or were stripped of their wrappings, which were subsequently exported to the US for use in the paper making industry. Even the United States, the so-called United States, were involved in trading the bodies of Africans in making paper. And these are the people that Africans are looking as role models today, people that did so much evil and horror to Africans. The author, Mark Twain, even reported that mummies were burnt in Egypt as locomotive fuel. Now, who were the people using it as locomotive fuel? It was the Europeans in Africa, in Egypt, that were burning these mummies and using them as locomotive fuel. As the 19th century advanced, mummies became prized objects of display, and scores of them were purchased by wealthy European and American private collectors as tourist souvenirs. For those who could not afford a whole mummy, disarticulated remains such as head, hand, or foot could be purchased on the black market and smuggled back home. So I don't want to talk too much, because let my river of anger not overflow its banks. It is high time Africans stop behaving like slaves. It is high. You can imagine the other time the Queen of England, the whole African leaders packed themselves in a bus like slaves. They promised $80 billion. Oh my God, what is wrong with Africa? What is wrong with this continent? Why are Africans behaving like slaves? Why? Anyway, I just decided to point this out. I believe it will make impact to those who to make impact on. Thank you.